Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is John. I'm a filmmaker slash creator and your host for Make Lemonade podcast, where we talk about how to change our circumstances when life happens. In other words, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Today, we're talking about learning your craft, which I believe will help us move forward this year. What's going on, everyone? John here, your host for today. Today, we're talking about learning your craft. Now, this is something that I really want to talk to you about because, there's just been a lot of things that I've seen on, social media platforms, a lot of new stuff that have been happening, and I believe that this is crucial to us moving forward into this year, right? Because again, we talked about it in our last podcast. There's a lot of uncertainty going on. We don't know how things are going to go, if it's going to get worse, if it's going to get better. But we have hope, right? The three things that we talk about is having hope, faith, and love, right? In this year, those are the main things that we have left as humanity, as humans. We have hope, faith, and love. Those are three things that I encourage you to cherish with you everywhere you go, to whoever you take it to. Cherish those things that you have. So today we're talking about learning your craft. And the reason why I say that this is going to take us and move us forward into this year is because I think in so many cases, like I was saying, in the social media, I've seen time and time again people not feeling motivated, not feeling inspired, and they crash in, like, 2-3 months to a year, and it seems like, man, this is not for me, right? And we seem to be disappointed, we seem to be just discouraged. And the thing about process is it's about learning your craft. That's the beautiful thing about the process of life. And when it comes to, if you want to build a career, if you want to build a job, if you just want to be happy and want to believe that, you love what you do, then by all means do that, right? But you have to understand that it's going to take you a process. Even if you have fame, even if you have, the upper right hand where you know somebody in somewhere, the thing is that you're going to have to still continue to grow your craft by learning what is applied into that craft that you want to be into, right? One of the most wisest things that I ever heard in my entire life that I take to this day is learn the business that you want to be in. That is super crucial, right? Because, when you want to change something, for example, when you want to go into somewhere and you want something new, you have to know the basics of what's going on in that area, subject, career, whatever you will. You have to know the basics. You got to know the foundation of it. Why? Because it's going to tell you everything that's been going on in that field. And not only that, it's going to reveal your history. It's going to reveal who's on top, who's in the bottom. How do you move up in this, business or area or subject. And that's the whole process of learning your craft. You're figuring out, because if one of the best things that I learned about film is that a lot of people talk about the rules of films, right? You have the rule of thirds, you have the 180 rule, and you have all these rules that you have to apply in order to get something that people are accustomed to, or at least that is human-like into the eyes. So what does that mean for us? What that means what I have loved about filming is that you know the rules in order to break them, right? And it's not so much breaking them, but it's more along the lines of maneuvering your way around things and getting things done, because you already know how to move in your field, right? You know the business, you know how things run. So now you can either make something new, or you can remake something, or you can, add to it. Whatever it is that you want to add from your character, your persona, the way that you think, you can. But first, you need to learn your craft. And I think what happens is that we want to in some way automatically just have the fame, have the ability to do things, and people love us, you know. And sometimes people do, right? But that's not everyone, right? It doesn't happen. We just don't have magical people who out of nowhere pop out and they're just amazing. No, they've had their process. They've had their way of building themselves to who they were. They may have started way before you did, or they just kept on persisting until something happened, right? Something moved. And that's the process of what's going on here. When you're learning your craft, there may be times that somebody might see your work and be really impressed and say, you know what, come on, right? And then you're going to be growing your craft at a different level now. Does that make sense? So every time people grow their craft very differently. Some people learn faster. Some people their time of learning is a little bit of their pace. They have to run a marathon instead of a sprint, you know. And depending what area you're in as well, the way that your area is, where do you believe? One of the beautiful things that I have discovered is I have actually did research of what moves a state and within the country of the United States, right? And you can do this for your own country, wherever you're listening from right now. You can, you know, whatever state or whatever area, region you're in, find out what moves that region and see how you can help for that region, right? How can you be a part of that region and move through that region with what your craft is about. Now, if your craft is somewhere else, then you might want to move over there so that you can grow your craft, know people, grow your network, whatever the case may be. Now, that doesn't work for everyone. Sometimes people need to grow where they're planted, right? So you maybe it's your opportunity to start something that has never been started in a place that people don't think it could be started, right? And that's the process of something growing. Is it going to be easy? No. It doesn't matter what road you take in life, it's never easy. It's never, just because you take another road that you think it's going to be less work, it's not. It's always a process. You know, I hear people talking about a lot about, how can they make money and how they only work 2 to 3 hours a day and blah, 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 And the reality is that that process of 2 hours a day, whether it be true or whether it not be true, I can't really judge them on that because I don't know exactly what they're doing. But I can tell you this much, that 1, 2, 3 hours adds up and adds up and adds up every week, every month, and by the end of that month, they'll be working so many hours, but they're doing something for that, right? Whether it be the day they're working for, something that they're working the next month, something they're working for next week, something that they're looking into their numbers, their analytics, how they're growing on their marketing, how much money they're making, are they losing, do they need to get more products? I mean, all of that takes hand in hand. So when somebody says they're working 1 to 2 hours, 3 hours, it doesn't mean that particularly they are just working those hours in for what they're doing. No, they're still thinking about what they can do. How can they grow more? And that's the process. So, everything that someone goes through is a process, and that process is never easy. So if you're thinking that there's something out there that you can do that's going to be easy, it's not easy, because why? It takes action. It takes work. It takes moving into that, and that's called learning your craft. That's called learning what the business is about. And even if you go to medical, if you want to become a doctor, right? Say you want to start, you still have to learn the craft of it. You got to learn the business side of it. You got to learn the communication side of it. And of course, they teach you all that stuff in the doctor once you become a doctor. But the business side of it, not so much, right? Communication, you have to take classes. You got to make sure that you take classes, and not every single part of it is directed to that. You get what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert in doctors. Please don't get me. I don't know every single thing about doctors, but I'm just giving an example of what a field takes. Everything has its own challenges. Some challenges are a little bit tougher than others, but the process is still there. You have to learn your craft. You have to grow it. You have to cultivate it. You have to see who you are inside and how that's going to affect your craft. How is that going to grow your craft? Who is going to be, impressed or like, or whatever it is the case, right? The point is, you're learning your craft and you're growing. And in order to understand the learning part, in order to understand the craft, you have to go through this process. And that process is growth. That process is learning. And and it's so beautiful, because I remember I was reading the book by Gladwell, Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote the book about the 10,000 hour rule, right? And of course, it's not called the 10,000 hour rule, but that's how people know the book. It's a book that was written about 10,000 hour. Anyways, my point is, so when I first got my hands on this book, I was very interested, right? Because I wanted to learn the process of getting information and how it stays in there in your mind, and how do you grow it until you become actually an expert on something that you're doing. And so when I was researching, I was googling, I was going through all these websites, and I came upon this book that Malcolm Gladwell wrote, and it was a 10,000 hour rule. Now, of course, it's not called a 10,000 hour rule, but that was the process of it. So the point about this is that, as I was reading this book, but before I even started reading it, I wanted to get details about what other people were talking about this book, right? Because I eventually wanted to make a video about this book. And then I started seeing a lot of people um, talk about the book, and seeing how it was 10,000 hour rule, and how he talked about math, and how he said like all this stuff about where you're from and how you grow. And pretty much the point was, if you do 10,000 hours of learning anything, you can get really good at it and become a pro, right? And again, the book is called Outliers. I was researching right now just so you could know the name of the book in case you want to read it. But my point to this was, as I saw this, and it seemed like everybody was saying the same information. I was really intrigued, because I was like, okay, maybe he does talk about the 10,000 hour rule. And it's really interesting how you hear three perspectives, right? Because I went through the audience, I went through reading the book myself, and I went through listening to the author talk about the book. Those three are very interesting. If you're interested in hearing the author talk about the book, go to masterclass.com, and you can hear Malcolm Gladwell talk about the book and talk about writing in particular. But since I took that masterclass so that I could know what Gladwell thought about this book behind the scenes, right? What was it that made him write this book? All this stuff that got into, which was very interesting. So if you're interested in that, please go there. It does cost, but if you can get a year subscription, and you can get a lot more than just one person. You actually get a bunch of people. Again, I'm not sponsored by this, but I really like this masterclass learning, because you actually learn from people who are in the industry and professionals. So, anyways, so again, I saw those three perspectives, and so I saw the audience perspective, I saw the book perspective, and then I saw Malcolm perspective. And I was really interested on what the people were saying, because it was nothing what the book was talking about. And to a certain extent, the book does talk about the 10,000 rule, but it's just an idea. It's just something that, gives you an idea of what it could be to learn something. But the bottom line of this book wasn't so much about the 10-hour rule. The bottom line of this book is literally describing of how people come from different areas, learn differently, but in the process, it's up to us to really gain what we want. It's up to us to really discover for ourselves, what we want to do in this life, and do we really want to do it. And so that's what I got from this book, and it wasn't so much a 10,000-hour rule. It's just how much are you willing to go for what you want, and what are you willing to do for it. Because many people from different lifestyles come differently, and they do stuff because they want to. They do stuff because they push through themselves, and you have to know the time and the place of where you're at in order to really get yourself across to something. And that was pretty much the perspective that I saw from this book. And it was lined with the perspective that Malcolm Gladwell was talking about in the book. And he describes how people, in a way, grabbed a different part of the book and ran with it, but it was something that he wasn't really trying to say. And so, what I understood about this in connection to learning your craft is that you have to apply what you're doing, what you're learning to yourself. You have people who inspire, you have people who write biographies and so on and so forth, but really we don't know the person behind it. You know what I mean? We don't know the people who are inspiring, what they went through, what was their process, how did they get to that place. And that's the point that I'm trying to get to. When you're learning your craft, you have to build your roadmap to where you want to be. And that is the process. That is where you get to learn, get to build, get to do so many things, and it develops into the character that you are. It develops into who you will be. And that's why I wanted to talk about learning your craft. Because in so many places, the only person that can really learn your craft is not your next neighbor, it's not the person you admire who's really good at what you want to do. It's what you want to do. How many times do you want to practice it? How many times do you actually want to apply what you're learning into your life? And that is the super most important part of, I say, creating anything, any business, any education, career, learning the craft of the business, learning the craft of what you're doing, because that's what's going to get you through. That's what's going to move you forward through your goal and to get to your goal, as a matter of fact. So today, as you're listening, as you're gaining some wisdom right now, and this podcast Make Lemonade, as we go through life circumstances, there's a lot of things that we go through life that disappoints us. But what I want you to do today is choose one thing that you want to do for the rest of your life. Grow by practicing, grow by learning the business, and apply yourself fully to that. And you will find that it's not at the end of the line that you find happiness, but it is during the process that happiness is applied. Enjoy the process. Love every person, everything that you go through to get to where you need to be. Because there's relationships that you will build up. There's networks that you'll build up. There's, a lot of that you will gain. That process is the beautifulness of it. I think in some cases we believe that when we get to when we want to be, we're going to be absolutely happy. But the thing is, when we get to our goal, it doesn't stop there. Our life continues. Time still runs. So that means that when we get to our goal, we still have another goal now to reach. And life continues. So, as you are growing, as you are going through this year, you're beginning, you're getting ready, your New Year's resolution, or you're already ready, remember this. Learn your craft. Learn it. Take time for it. Practice it as much as you can. And enjoy the process. Alright, guys. My name is John, and I was your host for Make Lemonade Podcast, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.